Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conversion Conversations. This is Cameron, and today I have Drew from Wizards of the Coast with me. Drew, Nolosco, how are you doing today?
Hello, it's good to be on the show. I'm doing well. We're coming out of the holiday season and the Wizards break, and we're gearing up for 2020.
Yeah, and
So I'm excited to be on your show.
hopefully I've nabbed you the first out of anyone for 2020. I wanted to first say congratulations. Like last year was a big growth year for the Transformers TCG. We hit our first anniversary in the game, and then we just had the Energon Invitational in December, and had our kind of celebratory standalone package in the Energon edition. So a lot of big firsts last year. Also, congratulations to Dan Arnold, who won the Energon Invitational. Um, I kind of wanted to. I know you guys have published some articles looking back on the growth of the Transformers TCG, but I wanted to look back on 2019 now that you've had some time in holiday and stuff. What would you say for your team was the most proud accomplishment that you guys had last year? I know you guys won an award internally in the company. We got to see the special card that you guys got. Is that tied to the thing you're most proud of you guys did, or was it some other team achievement?
So there's some behind the scenes things and some public facing things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they are kind of different. One of the things that we won that award for, which was called Heroes of the Realm, was for lack of a better term, like the way we do our business as a team, how we are able to um, increase efficiency, decrease timelines. It's a lot about the team coming together very rapidly, cohering very rapidly, and then being able to execute quickly at high quality while
Mm-hmm.
still being able to iterate fast enough to adapt to market conditions, opportunities from our partners at Hasbro, and so on and so forth. Um, and that was a really amazing accomplishment, and it was the work of a lot of dedicated people, many of whom you've heard about, like um, lead designer Ken Nagel, but also people that you don't hear about very frequently, like our producer Will Ansell and the folks who are involved with the physical engineering of products, and all of these people together were able to do something really kind of amazing. So that is an amazingly proud achievement. I think the achievement that is more public facing, that we're especially proud of, was the way that we were able to work with the Transformers team to create Siege One and Siege Two. Um, it's very different working on Transformers products that look backwards than Transformers TCG products that look forwards. And the looking backwards, that um, is there's no real difference in terms of the skill or care or the craft that goes into it, but the the way that we sync up with Hasbro and the Transformers toy and creative teams there is very different.
Yeah, it Siege 1 and Siege 2, like I mean, from the outside looking in, I could already tell that there's a tremendous like logistical effort that had to go behind the scenes. I think I'm a Transformers fan before I became a TCG fan, and we're so used to as Transformers fan that oh, there's a toy line and here's a comic book that ties in and here's a movie and a TV show and a cartoon that ties in. But then like to actually get all that coordinated, I'm sure had to take a lot of effort and, like you said, a lot of coordination. Is I guess in 2019, in that accomplishment of getting Siege One and Siege Two out the door, and doing such a great job with it. I think right we saw how the two waves separately affected the meta when they came out, but then we saw some great synergy across the waves as they tied in, and that made me and a lot of other players really excited. Um, is that I guess moving forward in the future, is that something that is a goal and an aspiration for the team to do? I know you obviously can't say how frequently or if it's with any regularity, but was that, like you said, a positive experience that you guys are trying to repeat in the future?
Yes, and it's we're going to alternate between sets that are what we're calling throwback sets. Think of Rise of the Combiners as a throwback set.
Yep,
It takes
the Prime trilogy, Rise of the Combiners, Titan's Return, Power of the Primes. Yeah.
uh, no, I'm at the uh, Wave 2,
Oh, Wave. Oh, gotcha. The card set. Yep.
right? Like the card set look that throwback sets look backwards into Transformers IP history and say, hey, there's this cool thing,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that was primarily done in the toys, and we can use that as a mechanical hook to build a really interesting set that satisfies Transformers fans.
Mm-hmm.
So those throwback sets we intend for them to alternate with sets that look at current Transformers generations, toy lines and storylines in the way that Siege 1 and Siege 2 did. Um, and it's not like there's no defined cadence here. It's not like, okay, throwback, future, or some, like 2-to-1 mix or whatever. It's what's right for the game, what's right for the Transformers IP. But yes, Siege 1 and Siege 2 from a story and IP point of view worked really well,
Mm-hmm.
both for us and for the Transformers team at Hasbro and for fans. And like one of the ways that you can see that was successful is Siege 1 was us working with Hasbro to take a risk of the risk was both in just like sync up and timing, but that stuff's like manageable. Like, it involves a lot of smart people and hard work, but also things like, oh, here are a bunch of characters who are now canonically in the Siege storyline, but show up in the card game expression of the storyline and not in toy. And
Yeah.
then, sorry, like that went really well. And then Mercenaries showed how well that went. Like debuting a faction of Transformers that's going to be part of Generations universe in the trading card game was, I mean, that actually may be the single most accomplishment that I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
Is
That's
being
a
able
really
to do
that
that.
one was really cool to see. I remember those reveals. That was really awesome to see. Transformers fans looking into the TCG and saying, "Hey, what are those guys doing? What are those guys doing over there? What's up with that?" And we're like, "Well, you'll have to see when it comes into the rest of the media."
Yep. Uh, I remember running once. I remember getting off the call where we came to an agreement that would happen with the Transformers creative folks and the brand folks, and I distinctly remember running around and screaming. Uh, so it worked well. I mean, Rise of the Combiners from an IP point of view worked well too, and I can dive into that if you're okay with it for a second. In
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
like, it pulled combiners from a lot of different places. It wasn't specifically it's the G1 combiners time. Um, it was combiners are awesome. Let's use that as a focus, and that's the kind of thing that we'll be doing for other cool toy mechanics. This is not a pejorative term, but toy gimmicks. It's an industry term.
Oh
It
yeah.
has carries no pejorative. Um, uh, and I think we like that because it gives us mechanical grounding to hang sets on. Like we have to have like the coat hook theory of game design is like you have to hang your coat on something, and there may be other things that make that cool, but in the end, there's a support structure that that holds the set together, and the Transformers IP is ripe with inspiration for those coat hooks. There's not an infinite amount, but there are a lot.
Yeah. Like we've seen in the game, right? We had combiners. Well, I guess the if you were talking toy gimmicks, every Transformers fan has to recognize that the line itself, the original toys, were gimmicks. Transformation
Mm-hmm.
itself is a gimmick. But yeah,
Yep.
combiners, and then in Siege, we've seen Target Masters, Battle Masters, and then like yeah, you're right. It's not infinite, but there's opportunity in the future. There's headmasters. There's all sorts of things that we could see in the future. Which and the other thing I appreciate is that you guys aren't abandoning. It's not like Rise of the Combiners came out and that was Combiners and then that's it been in it since. We've seen Flywheels. I'm playing around with Omega Supreme, which is a ton of fun. So it makes me excited that the next set, whatever it may be, it doesn't mean it doesn't have any combiners. It might not have any, but it might still have some reference to the old stuff and build on what's come before rather than just being, okay, here's this waves gimmick. I appreciate that from a player perspective a lot.
It was very intentional that Rise of the Combiners was the second set. I mean, looking back at 2019, we started with Rise of the Combiners. The reason that it was the second set is because combiners are such an important mechanical theme for us that we knew that it was something that it would allow us to do a lot of characters who were otherwise difficult to do. And one of the things that we're constantly keeping track of and constantly looking for is opportunities to introduce characters into the TCG who haven't yet appeared in the TCG. And Wave 5 does that really well, by the way.
Well, I'm very excited once we get to Wave 5 spoiler season.
Yep, there's a whole lot of new characters in there. And part of that is because of mechanical hooks, toy gimmicks, and these themes allow us to bring in a whole bunch of new characters. And some of them, like combiners, will become evergreen, right? Like they'll show up time and again. And there's certainly an entire set, and maybe 2 sets worth of combiners that we haven't done. And that's not even counting just throwing in a couple here and there.
Oh, do you mean like if you wanted to do a second? I obviously wouldn't be called Rise of the Combiners 2, but
effectively, right? Like
the combiners continue rising up or
yes,
stay standing.
yeah, exactly. So that's why we wanted to get Rise of the Combiners out as the first expansion.
From I guess from my perspective, I'm curious from a manufacturing perspective. I know we had mentioned before in a previous interview we talked about the rise of the combiner, the card manufacturing is, and then we've seen like big double-sided cards for characters, small double-sided cards for characters, the battle cards, the tri-folding cards. Is there, in terms of manufacturing technology, do you think is there any other space that you feel that the game has to explore, or whatever that frontier might be, you guys haven't done that part yet?
There absolutely is. And I mean, you can get a sense of some of the interesting things that Wizards has done by looking at the Duel Masters game, which is our Japanese market only TCG. And even beyond that, there are toy gimmicks that I don't know would be fully realized using currently printed stuff. Not to say that we have to develop new technology, but just inside the Transformers TCG. Like, I don't think Pretenders are really well done by any of the current methods that we have. Like it would be, right? It would have to be something new and interesting that it adds an element of surprise into it.
Right. And I'll throw a picture up if people don't know what Pretenders are. They are when the toy line came out, and I don't remember the exact year, but I think it was like 88 or something. You had an action figure, if I'm correct, and inside that action, you could open the action figure up, and inside that action figure was a small transforming robot that could turn into a vehicle. So you had a transformer inside a shell. So yeah, yes, you're right. You'd have to like, I don't know, tri-fold a card around another card or something crazy. But it's interesting that you bring that up.
Or stickers or scratch off. Like there's printing technologies that we can take advantage of that can allow us to remain true to the Transformers toy gimmick and make it feel like it really is not just lazily inspired by or correlating to, but strongly correlating to. Like I think the threefold cards feel so good, for triple changers, and they really challenge expectations of what can a card game be and do. And since we have the freedom to do that because we don't shuffle the character cards, like we're going to continue to take advantage of it where we can.
Exactly. And that's one thing that I've very much appreciated is like the Energon edition, right? That's a special edition deluxe product. You don't have to shuffle those character cards in your deck, so make them out of high quality plastic. Like that's brilliant. It feels good. And I'm one of those crazy people in the community apparently that I really enjoy folding my foldable cards. I know not everyone does, but that like it's just a tactile feeling that feels good when I play my combiners. I like them folded or Springer for that matter. Um,
I am very much in your camp. I generally dislike playing with sleeves at all. And so that there are a number of extremely horrified players who I sit across from with decks um, that when I don't have sleeve decks, and like I recognize like there are some decks that I just need to sleeve, and I do so, but I also fold my triple changes and
I was gonna say don't get crazy on me, Drew. I still sleeve and double sleeve everything. I just still fold it. I've got
no,
those nice like side fitting sleeves.
yeah, that they fit really well, and you
Yep.
put one on each side of the trifold
Yep.
card, and it works really well.
Were you, I guess, because this kind of transitions to my next question, I was going to ask kind of the biggest lesson you guys learned for 2019, but were you surprised at all, or were you anticipating that most, or I don't know, most, I shouldn't say that, a number of players in the community would not be folding their cards? Did you print those knowing that, hey, it's foldable for those that like it? It doesn't have to be folded if you don't want to do it that way.
We anticipated that some um, players would not fold their cards. I think to my and discredit, I underestimated in general how much people would want to um, sleeve, and we knew that like we had conversations with accessories manufacturers, in particular Ultra Pro, or even before the game was launched, to make sure that protective products were available. But I underestimated the demand for things like the oversized double-sided clear. Flat out, I was wrong.
Oh yeah, you're right. I do remember early in 2019 there was almost like there was a shortage. I think of the Ultra Pro
I,
BCW, the 3.5 by
no,
5.5s.
no, I think Transformers fans just wiped the inventory out of the U.S. market.
Yeah, I think they've compensated since then, so it's all good.
Yep, that they are now available,
Yeah,
and there's some sleeves from other manufacturers as well because it's a
yeah.
standard card size, right?
Yep. And if anything, that's a testament to the game, right? You don't need that many character cards. Each wave there's 40-ish, 40 to 50 character cards, but if they're wiping out the stock of hard covers for their character cards, that's a strong sign that I think there's a lot of demand for the game out there, which is good.
Yeah, and going back to sleeving, I do recommend that people use double-sided clear sleeves for their Energon edition cards. Right,
Mm-hmm.
like any piece of plastic, if you mistreat it, you can bend it or gouge it or ding it,
Yeah.
and the sleeves help protect it.
I'm just waiting for 10 years from now. Knock on wood, the game's going strong. You guys do your Platinum Energon edition, which every card is made out of sterling silver or something. That's my fan dream. We'll see if we get there.
Ha. Okay. So Wizards has produced metal cards in the past. There was a Duel Masters product released a number of years ago, eight ish years ago, called Full Metal Deck. And it was apparently a very difficult product to make at the time. And I'm not saying, I just want to be very clear with fans, all fans, we're not making metal cards anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
But we have made metal cards in the past, and it is in the toolbox, but it's not something I am particularly interested in going to that part of the toolbox right now.
That makes sense. So going back to 2019 and the retrospective, one thing that I appreciated post every big tournament, I think maybe the Energon Invitational hasn't been posted yet, but you guys had a breakdown of kind of here's the cards that we saw based on the deck lists, and here's the most popular, least popular. Here's what had representation. I'm really excited for seeing that for Energon Invitational if I've missed it, just because of how diverse that field seemed to be. But
Yes.
in looking back on 2019, aside from the sleeves, what do you think the biggest lesson you learned in this big year for Transformers was?
So I think an important part of this, again, I will get to your question. This is a little bit roundabout.
That's the way I
I,
do things. Don't worry about it. I appreciate
I just want to be upfront that this will eventually wind its way back to an answer.
it.
Uh, um, I think one of the things that's very important when managing the design health and by extension the metagame health of a trading card game is that game design is pushing its boundaries into interesting and exciting places.
Hmm.
Uh, I think that uh, that boredom can happen when design is too samey, too alike over time.
If all you're
And
doing is adding a couple keywords that fudge numbers and stats and that sort of thing.
that's correct. And you can certainly safely design a game that way, but it's not a very exciting game, and it's not an inspiring game. Like it does, like you can start plugging things into an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm not dinging anyone who does it because Lord knows I've done it myself many a time. But once it becomes a pure spreadsheet game, um, some of that spark is lost. And so one of the real things that I think game design, and I challenge my game designers to do, is come up with those moments of exciting, I can't believe they did this, or or even better, I can't believe they did this. And I can't wait to figure out how to around it. And to bring this back to your question, I think one of the lessons that we learn is how we communicate with the community when we are doing it, and why we're doing it, and what happens when we push the boundary a little bit too much. Like there are some cards, like Press the Advantage
Hmm.
was banned this year, and it wasn't because Press the Advantage was pushing into a incredibly interesting design space. It was designed as a sideboard card, and we got that wrong. We judged wrong, and the card was too ubiquitous, and so we banned it.
Hmm.
And I think that the game is better for it. And then there are things like Daring Escape, right? Daring Escape is, and which we haven't banned, and we are at this moment not interested in banning it. But we need to be clear with the community why we create cards like that. Part of it is to as I said, like push the boundaries. There are a lot of people who were very obviously very interested in designing Press the Advantage decks. And also, when the balance on this is correct, uh, cards like Press the Advantage help provide a buffer against sameness in game design for Transformers. Right? Like I know this is turning into a long answer, but let me know if you need me to wrap it up.
No, no,
But
no.
like,
I appreciate long answers.
okay, like Transformers in some ways is a race between how much damage output do I have and how much damage mitigation do you have, and that's a two-axis universe. It's that is a very simplified description of it, but over the long run, that's ultimately what it is. And one of those axes produces an outcome for the game. If I have more damage than you can mitigate, I win.
Hmm.
But the other axis doesn't. Like,
Until Daring Escape.
right? And so the other axis is I can sit back and do nothing and prevent this game from ending. And cards like Daring Escape whether they are literally like Daring Escape, whether they're alt win conditions, or whether they're other types of card design that operate sideways to these axes. Think of Cosmos from Wave 1.
Mm-hmm.
These cards say, uh, you can play this game, this two-axis game all you want. I don't care. I'm playing my own game. And they serve as an effect when the balance is correct. They serve as an effective buffer for that two-axis system from getting stale and boring, or from turning into a system where it's just this like giant black hole of games that never end.
Right. And I think we, um, early in the competitive scene, I know the game's more than just the competitive scene, but early in the competitive scene, when people were first trying out some of the Wave 2 decks, I remember at Origins, and we got these Superion on Superion matches that the players might have been a little newer or less familiar with the deck list. I remember like there were matches that were constantly going to time just because uh, they weren't really doing much to each other. There wasn't enough, like you were saying, damage output compared to how much damage mitigation they had available to them.
Yep, and I think modern Superion lists are a little bit different. They're really good.
Yes.
Like Superion is very good at and the aerial bots are very good at channeling where damage is applied to the team and mitigating it. Um, uh, and modern lists now also know how to deal damage.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. That's been an interesting thing to see Superion in particular evolve as kind of a deck that became premier in Wave 2, and seeing how Wave 3 gave it some things to compete against, but then Wave 4 gave it some real cool new tools.
Yep, and um, I will go back and say one of the other biggest lessons that we learned uh, was we made a gigantic error in one of two things. And I think we have arrived at an answer, but I'll let you and the listeners determine which is probably the more correct answer for you. And it has to do with Rise of the Combiners and the 5 combiners. 4 of those combiners have been played competitively, at least to some degree or another. And 2 of them are potentially very good. Like the aerial bots in general have survived the test of time. They are still relevant, even if it's a fringe level. You bring an aerial bot deck to the competitive table, no one is going to say you're a nutcase. That's a terrible idea. You bring um, uh,
Venusaur?
no, Optimus Maximus.
Oh, since
No.
you're talking about the other competitive deck.
Yes, you bring the Sentinels to the table, also competitive,
Mm-hmm.
right? And two out of 5 being competitive is at various times in history is great. It's exactly what we wanted. But Volcanicus is the rare combiner, and either Volcanicus should have been one of the 2 competitive decks, or one of the 2 competitive decks should have been the rare combiner.
Oh, interesting.
And I say that because it had an absolute impact on sales, right? Like people, like we saw a distinct point where people were satisfied and didn't feel it was awesome to collect past the common combiner, which you can pretty much get in one box.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't trading for it. It was very obvious. And I think I will spoil the beans. I think the correct answer is Volcanicus should have been more awesome. And even if he wasn't competitive awesome, he should have been obviously awesome, right? Like there should have been a reason for players to desire collecting Volcanicus and playing with them, if not competitively on a regular basis, then at least be happy in more casual or games. Say, oh, this Volcanicus deck, it's not competitive, but it is unbelievably fun, and I'm happy with my 1 in 5 games being able to do the thing that Volcanicus is supposed to do. I mean, he's supposed to be able to punch you into the all the way back into the Jurassic Age, and he just doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Maybe if he
Right?
had some built-in OA or something like that.
Right? There are a number of solutions that would have made him more viable and awesome.
That's interesting. I mean, from my personal opinion, I think I agree with what you're saying because from a player perspective, and again a new TCG player perspective, I really appreciated. Okay, the two common combiners, Superion and Menasor. I think Superion more so, but Menasor still were fun competitive decks and didn't. It wasn't a great hassle to get the combiner characters and the Enigma. But I can understand where, from a sales perspective, if people aren't going after the rare character, the rare team, that does put a damper on the box.
Right, and not just the sales perspective, the enjoyment perspective, because five of the rares were less exciting than they could have been and should have been.
Mhm.
Like,
Now,
that's
does that open the door for? And obviously, we're not talking specifics, but we saw Dinobots in Wave One, and I think they've made a they've been consistently at a playable level, fun and enjoyable since Wave One. Um, the combiner Dinobots are still Dinobots. Would you see more like? Do you think the team would lean towards more tools for combiners to raise all the combiners up a level, or more Dinobot tribal tools to raise the Dinobots up?
I think answers exist in both of those possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
There are some cool things like Dino Chomp.
Mm-hmm.
That space is interesting, and that's the well, let's make the Dinobot keyword continuously relevant. And I think there are ways for us to point specifically at Volcanicus and say, hey, here's some help.
Gotcha. And I think you mentioned in a previous interview that you did believe that he was getting help from a new wave perspective in the future. Something down the line will be a tool for Volcanicus to use. I think I remember you saying that with maybe the Young Brothers or someone else.
Yep, yep, that's absolutely the truth. Is Volcanicus will get a little bit of love in the future.
Well, that's very exciting. I will say that I mean it. You're right in that it's not a 1 in 5th chance. For me, it was maybe 1 in 20 games. But the 1 in 20 games where I got Volcanicus up and running and then I was able to get the full heal on him, that did feel very good.
Right? Like I think the Volcanicus's core design is fine. I like the like, one of the things that we wanted to do, and I think I've said this before, but maybe not, is we wanted the individual Dinobots who make up Volcanicus to feel individually powerful because they're Dinobots, right? Um, and that from a star point value, that's very difficult to do. You can't make five really strong characters
Right,
and up to
if you got to
25
fit the
stars.
team active and not in the KO pool.
Exactly. So that's the why Dinobot. That's why Volcanicus's team is designed the way he is, and I still think that that is correct. Like the design goal is a worthy one. The
Mm-hmm.
execution, the execution, we could have done better.
How has, I guess, in the way you've been learning about games and testing and things like you mentioned before, I think there have been 3 bans in the game, battle cards out of 274 battle cards. That's, 1%, which from my perspective, on a design perspective, I think is tremendous. I think obviously it sucks whenever you have to ban something, but like you said, if you're not pushing your design space, then yes, you're not banning anything, but it's also maybe a bit stagnant and boring. With the game, how it's grown previously with organized play, has the internal testing design process changed at all to deal with maybe an increased volume in players that are going to be exposed to the game or anything, or is it kind of hold the course as we go through this second year?
So some of that is um, a little bit too close to how we make the donuts,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but yes, we. I can say that just Wizards generally, our game design process is not a static thing; it's a constantly iteratively improving thing, and we have people who spend a fair amount of time just thinking about like how do we design better. We have game design managers who look at the process and improve the process. So yes, I do think that we are constantly attempting to and succeeding at attempting to improve the craft and art of making our games. Um, I hope that answered clearly enough.
Yes.
It's I would say that in my 9 years at Wizards, things have changed so drastically and so much for the better, that it feels exciting and cutting edge as to how we think about the art of making trading cards.
That is exciting to hear. Like, I mean, I don't have that kind of history with TCGs in general, but I did wonder kind of how things have changed from when Magic the Gathering first came out to now that, Wizards of the Coast has all these different games they manage and things like that. Do you guys, I guess, in your, like you mentioned the team earlier, um, and you guys have been really good about, I think, I know you said one of the things you learned was the way you need to communicate with the community, but I wanted to give you guys props for the way you guys do currently communicate in terms of articles. I don't think, like the bands previously mentioned, for example, like there was a great article with each decision that kind of laid out, here was the decision, here were the options we had, here's how we judge them. I really appreciated that as a player. And then I also appreciated the interviews you guys do with people like me and the rest of the community, as well as the FaceTime that you have put in previous tournaments and events. I wanted to know is from what I understand, I don't think that is typical for the Wizards different teams and stuff to have that much FaceTime. Is that something that just by necessity you think might have to change as the game continues to grow, or do you plan in 2020 to try and have the same level of presence in the bigger tournaments and things like that?
So I think the Magic community, the Magic team, um, puts in a fair amount of effort into the community relations. I mean, you look at Mark Rosewater with his daily blog, Gavin Verhey. There are a lot of people on the R and the game design side. I was going to say the R&D side, the game design side, um, and also the art side, who are pretty public about how discussing what they do and how we do with the community. And yes, I think that you're going to see that from Transformers. Excuse me, to the extent possible, in 2020 and beyond. But the philosophy certainly hasn't changed. We think it's correct, um, to be pretty transparent with the community about why we are doing the things we are doing. And I think some of the lessons, we've learned is that, uh, that has fostered this positive sense, in the community about what we do. I think it's very important that even when that our motives are clear, right? Like our motives are to represent Transformers characters in gameplay in an exciting and fun and, engaging way. And and I think that we have successfully, the community, we have been successful in our communications with the community, such that the community really gets that that's what our goal is, and that we are deeply committed to it. And there's no reason to change. That's exactly what we want the relation.
Yeah, and I think you've done a great job so far with that, especially like you said, representing the Transformers as characters in the game. I think one of the interesting things to me has been the decisions that you guys have made, and the thought you've put behind them into kind of how, I don't want to say how aggressive characters are portrayed, but like things like, okay, Shockwave is this cold, calculating character. We want him to be a control character, but not just defensive. He needs to be able to, wave 3 Shockwave. We want him to show how manipulating and cunning he is by being able to do these sorts of actions to your hand. Lord Megatron is, Megatron. He's just a jerk and just wants to hurt you as much as possible. So we'll figure out a way to punish the player for, reshuffling their deck. Optimus Prime, I think and it's not just one Optimus Prime. Battlefield Legend, Sentinels, General Optimus, I know there's 2 generals, but Galaxy Optimus. Each one, I think, has shown a different aspect of his character and been strong cards as a result of that. I did want to ask because someone else, one of my listeners, wanted me to ask the question. Just in terms of what we've seen on the larger scale meta level, was there any specific thought behind the trend that we've seen that the Autobot decks tend to be a little more orange heavy, aggressive, and the bad, quote unquote, the bad guys, the Decepticons, tend to be a little more controlled, defensive level, and winning through hand manipulation or building advantage in other ways. Was that
So
something? Oh, go ahead.
there there's there's an unintentional reason why that happens,
Mm-hmm.
and that unintentional reason is the association between Decepticon characters and tanks. And since tanks
Ah,
are more aligned with Decepticon alt modes, you're going to see, you saw in year one, more of the blue meta being Decepticon oriented. And it's unintentional in the sense that it works as a system, but it's not. We didn't say Decepticons are going to be the blue control side of this equation, and
mm-hmm.
Autobots are going to be the aggressive side. Instead, there was let's make the characters authentic. Tanks tend to be, we have to represent defensiveness in some way, and that it's sort of aligned that way.
That makes
As to
sense.
and while tanks are in the game, which is likely forever, as long as this game goes, there's going to be tank characters.
Mm-hmm.
I really hope I don't regret that statement.
Yeah.
But no, as the metagame evolves and shifts over time, and as we put different ingredients into the metagame, things like tricksy Autobot decks are certainly possible, and over the lifetime of the game, they're very possible.
And we've seen some of that already. For the one I think of is Mirage, right? He's the character that could do a hologram of himself, and Wave 1 Mirage had the untap when he's got 4 white pips, that sort of thing. Cool stuff like that.
Yep.
So I had my own personal my pet theory when someone asked me to ask you the question. I told them that my thought was Transformers started, and you can tell me how good as an ad hoc theory this sounds. Transformers started as a Saturday morning cartoon. And in the 80s, traditional Saturday morning cartoons, your villain would come up with a plan, and then your heroes would have to go in and kind of stop them and stomp them. So I imagine the trend was your Decepticons had their plan and they were doing something, and the Autobots, you guys wanted them to be a little more aggressive, to be the proactive guys going in and stopping the bad guys.
I am really sorry to break this to you, but I don't think we ever thought about that.
I figured not.
That's an interesting theory, though, and it sort of does. Like, I can see you constructing that theory out of the available information,
Mm-hmm.
which doesn't mean it's not valid. It was just not our intent.
And I guess I think we're about to wrap things up, but I had one last question for you. Just looking into 2020, it's a whole new year ahead of us. We know that Wave 5 is coming out sometime in the spring. I think maybe April was given as a month, but I'm not positive.
That sounds about right.
Looking into kind of 2020, what's your biggest goal for the game? I know we're probably still kind of, from your perspective, right? There's a growth phase of the game, and we want the games to always be growing. But is the focus pushing organized play? I know that we have new tournaments. One just happened at PAX South. There's PPG this coming weekend as of recording.
Yep, or it'll be this weekend in Orlando.
Yep. Is it kind of growing that structure, and does raising that level of gameplay kind of bring up the locals as people want to compete at the higher level? Do you want to kind of focus on store promo kits, or are there new ideas to kind of help local gaming shops get regulars to come in with incentives? Is there some other goal that you guys have that you want for the game?
So I think that I can preface this by saying that we thought that the opens and Energon Invitational, while there is room for iterative improvement. Like,
Hmm.
you know, oh, we could do this part of it better. Like, for example, announcements at the Energon Invitational could be clearer for everyone to hear. But in
Yeah.
general, we thought that that system worked really well,
Yes.
and that the tie-in between in-store play and invitations, again, there are some iterative improvements, but that worked pretty well. I think the thing that I would say that is an important goal for us is increasing the number of stores who officially support Transformers and allowing them to be sort of the seed around which community crystallizes, so that there is uh, very literally, so you don't have to drive so far to get to a local Transformers night. Uh, that is the way that I think that we promote growth of the game. And one of the ways that we can do that is look at the stores and communities, both communities of players who have helped self-organize and stores who have engendered robust Transformers play, at their success, so that they can sort of be beacons of and examples of how Transformers play is good for both retailers and players.
Yeah, that's coming from someone like in my local area. There's a tight knit group of like 10 to 12 of us, but we are trying to push for more players to join us. That sort of aspiration is very much appreciated. I look forward to seeing what you guys have planned. Um, is there, I
Oh,
get, oh, go ahead.
I have a personal goal. I have a shelf of Transformers that survived when I was a kid, like Grapple, which I've mentioned before, and I want all of them in the game by 20. Just saying.
You can't tell me all the names probably, but do you have a number? What number of characters or toys is that?
There's at least 3 that are critical for me.
Okay, and we know one of them is Grapple.
Well, and he's right, uh, and my Grapple, you've shown pictures of it. I did my promo back in Rise of the Diviners.
Hmm.
I'm very happy there. But yes,
That is
yes,
exciting.
personal goal.
I like it. So we'll have to do a wrap up when the end of 2020 happens, and we'll see if you hit that goal.
Yeah, did Drew get his Transformers from childhood into his game?
Yep.
That's that is a very critical decision making process that guides everything we do. There is a sarcasm tag there, just making sure that that comes across okay.
Yeah, I think it comes across better in voice than in. I know people struggle with sarcasm in text, but I hope they understood this one. Well, thanks so
Uh,
much, Drew. This was. Oh, go ahead.
uh, what is one goal for you? What do you hope to see? One top thing from Transformers TCG in the coming year?
From you guys or like my personal achievement goal?
What? How about what about?
Okay. From Transformers TCG, I think uh, the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is, like you mentioned, whatever tools that you're putting together to enable the local stores to grow their scenes, whether that's additional promotion prizes, um, decks. Like I know the group of us that do play, we have a series of kind of budget common and uncommon decks. I've got like a couple Superions and Menasors that we can just give to new players when they show up. Hey, check this out. Come play with us and keep these cards. Like whatever tools you guys might have for that would be super exciting to see announced. But then personally, I think um, my goal for this year, last year, I developed as a player. I think I got a lot more comfortable with the game. I played in at Origins, Gen Con, one of the PPG events, qualified and went to Energon Invitational. I'm not going next week because I've got a wedding, but I think my goal would be to go to one of the bigger tournaments and place with a deck I brewed entirely on my own, to see if I can kind of push that side of the game for me. Since I will admit I'm a better pilot than I am a brewer, so that's something I'd like to work on and develop, stretch those muscles this year.
Oh, I completely get you. I am in the same category. I am not the world's technically best trading card game player, and this has been true since my like Magic days in high school.
Mm-hmm.
But I am a better pilot than I am brewer in terms of competitive play.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, which just reminded me, apropos of nothing, actually, apropos of a question from earlier. One example of an Autobot control deck that we like very much is Omega Supreme Jetfire.
That's
No,
Wave 1
no,
Omega Supreme?
no, no,
Or...
no, no, no. Sorry, Ultra Magnus Jetfire. My bad. Um, uh, like the specifically the version of that uses Wave 1 Jetfire and Siege Ultra Magnus and plays around with reanimating the Ultra Magnus armor over and over again, sort of shifting around where it's supposed to go.
Yep.
That is a very control style deck.
Yep.
That is exclusively Autobot characters, and it does it sort of like armor manipulation is very different from other types of control. And so there are examples, and there you can expect to see more of that even in the near future.
That's exciting. I think with how, and I think, right, I don't think anyone's arguing that 2019 was not a huge success. I think it was a huge success for the game. So congratulations to you and the team. But you guys definitely set the bar high, and I'm excited to see how you guys will exceed those expectations in 2020. No pressure.
No pressure. This was awesome. I really enjoyed being on your show. I appreciate the questions from your fans. So, hey, listeners, send them on in, and let's get those questions next time I'm on the show. And until that time, roll out.
Thanks so much, Drew. Have a great one.
Pleasure.